If there is one thing I learned from my childhood, it is this. In a family, you can exist without ever truly being seen. You can scream, try, even desperately struggle, yet still be swallowed under someone else's shadow. I was not the best child, nor the worst one, but in my parents' eyes I was just the faded backdrop to the grand play called my sister. There are memories buried so deep that a mere whisper of wind can make them rise again, suffocating. This is the story of me, of Grace Taylor, the unnecessary child in her own home. Are you sure you are brave enough to hear it all? I was born in Wichita, Kansas, in what people often called a fairly well-off family. My father, Richard Taylor, owned one of the largest car dealerships in town, and my mother, Joanne, was once a high school teacher, before quitting her job when my sister, Abigail Taylor, was born. Abigail was 6 years older than me. That gap was enough to turn every moment of my life into an outdated copy of her earlier successes. I remember clearly, when I was in kindergarten, the living room walls at home were covered with pictures of Abigail. Abigail winning a children's singing contest, Abigail receiving a sports medal, Abigail at the costume festival. And my picture? Just one, tiny, tucked behind my parents' wedding photo. The day I asked my mother why there were not many pictures of me like there were of Abigail, she only smiled, patted my head and said, "You have to try harder if you want your picture up there, sweetheart." Growing up in Abigail's old clothes became an unwritten rule in our house. When Abigail reached high school and got her first prom dress, I anxiously waited for the day it would be mine. But by the time it was my turn, the dress was so worn out that nobody even glanced at it. My parents simply waved it off. "It is still good enough, Grace. Do not be so materialistic." Every birthday of Abigail's was a grand event. The house was decorated lavishly, a 3-tier cake, and a bunch of friends invited to party all day long. My birthdays? A small cake, a few thin candles, and sometimes just the 4 of us quietly singing "Happy Birthday" in the cold kitchen. I once thought maybe it was because I was not as talented as Abigail. But the truth was, no matter how hard I tried, I was just the faded shadow behind her. When I was chosen as the assistant editor for the school newspaper in 8th grade, my mother merely shrugged. "Abigail was the editor-in-chief back in 7th grade, Grace." When I won 2nd place in a statewide art contest, my father scoffed. "Your sister won 1st place in a singing competition at your age." It reached the point where I started to wonder, was I born just to be Abigail's background? I remember once when I was 13, I mustered all my courage to tell my mother that I wanted to learn to play the guitar. I can still feel the excitement swelling in my chest, like I had finally found something that belonged only to me. But my mother only shook her head. "Your sister already learned the piano, why waste time learning the guitar?" I clenched my fists, unable to speak. Every choice, every hobby of mine was measured against Abigail's standards. And it was always lacking, never enough, never worth noticing. Even during family meals, the conversation always revolved around Abigail. She just made the cheerleading team. She was about to enter the state debate competition. She got nominated for an honors scholarship. I sat there, dragging my fork across the cold food, quietly swallowing my own small dreams. My few friends would sometimes joke, "Grace, are you like the family's version B?" I laughed along, but inside, every laugh was a deeper cut into my self-worth. When I was 15, Abigail received a full scholarship to the University of California at Berkeley. My family threw a big backyard party, inviting the whole neighborhood to celebrate. That night, amid the music, laughter, and sparkling lights, I quietly climbed onto the roof and curled up, looking down at the party. I saw my parents hugging Abigail, their eyes glowing with pride. I hugged my knees tighter and whispered to myself, "Make movement, day, Grace, you will light up your own world." But that day was still far, far away. Ahead of me were long years of silently carrying the background role my family had assigned me. I did not know then that the injustice I silently swallowed during those years would become the seed for the fiercest uprising of my life later. When Abigail graduated college with honors, my family threw another grand party, this time at a luxury hotel by the Arkansas River. I had just finished my junior year of high school, boasting straight A's and 2 awards from the school board, but no one asked about it. My mother even ignored the letter of commendation from the principal that I had purposely placed right on the breakfast table. 3 months later, Abigail announced, "I am engaged. We are getting married next June." It was like a bomb exploded in my head. While I was drowning in college application forms, wondering whether I could afford to apply out of state or had to stay in Wichita to save money, they were planning a wedding? And that wedding, it was no small event. My mother mapped out the plans as if she were producing the Grammys: a custom dress from Denver, a lavish wedding at an expensive resort in Aspen, over 100 guests, a live band, and outdoor fireworks. I stood frozen in the kitchen when I heard my father mutter with a strained voice, "We will have to take out a loan. Do not tell Grace. She is already stressed with school." I heard it all. Every word. Every syllable, and I understood. My dream of going to college had just been mortgaged for my sister's wedding. I said nothing for the following months. I buried myself in studies, applied to 5 dream schools and 3 safeties, just like my mother suggested. I also picked up a weekend job at a local bakery. I worked and studied without complaint. I was waiting for a chance to be seen. The night I received my acceptance letter from the University of Washington, I jumped with joy. But the icy atmosphere in the living room when I brought the letter to them made me stop cold. My mother was picking wedding invitations, my father was hunched over a loan application. I held up the letter in front of them. "I got in, University of Washington, accepted me." My mother looked up for a brief second, nodded slightly. "That is good, but Grace, tuition there must be expensive, right?" I clutched the letter tighter. "You mean, we cannot afford it?" My father did not even lift his head, only shook it lightly. "We can help a little, but you will have to find scholarships or take out student loans." My mother quickly added, "With the wedding expenses and Abigail's upcoming plans, things are a bit tight, you understand, right?" I scoffed. It was not a laugh, it was a crack. "I understand. I understand perfectly." That night, I went online searching for scholarships, signed up for more hours at the bakery, and I started thinking about leaving my family for good. Abigail's wedding was like a dream, at least in everyone's eyes. A dazzling wedding dress, a bridesmaid lineup like something out of a movie, and me, standing at the end of the line, holding a drooping bouquet and forcing a strained smile. After the honeymoon, Abigail returned with more news. "We want to have a baby right away, and if all goes well, maybe even twins." My mother nearly exploded with happiness. "Oh my God, 2 little angels. You are planning to stay home to raise them, right, Abby?" Abigail nodded. "Jack earns enough, I want to focus on being a full-time mom." 1 month later, I happened to overhear a conversation in the dining room. "I think we should help them buy a house. Their apartment is way too small." "I agree. If we co-sign a mortgage with them, the bank will approve it more easily." I stepped into the middle of their conversation, feeling like someone had thrown a bucket of ice water in my face. "You are talking about helping Abigail buy a house?" Both of them turned toward me, a mix of surprise and slight embarrassment on their faces. "Where are you eavesdropping?" my mother asked. "I was just walking by, but if that is true, then let me ask, where is my tuition money? I still do not know how I am going to pay for my first semester." My father leaned on the table with both hands. "You can pick up more hours at the bakery, right? Or maybe go to school part-time to save money." I could no longer keep my composure. "You are willing to take out loans for Abigail's dream wedding, help her buy a house, but I have to struggle with extra jobs, scholarships, and debt?" My mother narrowed her eyes. "Grace, do not be selfish. Abby is about to become a mother, she needs stability. You are just starting your life." I let out a broken laugh. Exactly because I am just starting that I need support, but clearly I have never been this family's priority. Ugh. I walked away before I could say anything else. my heart heavy and my hands trembling with anger. The next week, I was awarded a small scholarship and found a cheap dorm near campus. I made arrangements to leave without needing to beg for anything. But deep down, a slow, expanding crack had begun, and I knew it would eventually break wide open. I moved to Seattle that fall. A gray and cold city, but, to me, everything felt warmed by hope. I was a freshman at the University of Washington, living in a small dorm room and working part-time at a cafe near campus. My schedule was packed, my shifts rotated non-stop, but at least I thought I was living my own life. 2 months after moving, I got a call from my mother. "Grace, are you free this weekend?" I had not even answered yet when she continued. "Abigail needs a little help. She and Jack have a doctor's appointment. They do not want to take the kids. We thought you could watch them for a few hours." I hesitated. "Mom, I have a major presentation on Monday, and I am working extra hours this weekend." My mother cut me off with that familiar tone, sweet first, sharp later. "Come on, Grace, your sister is pregnant again, you would not refuse your family, right? Family helps each other in times like these." 3 hours later, I was on an overnight bus back to Wichita. 16 hours traveling, just to play temporary babysitter. But temporary was just their first trick. After that, every holiday, every rare free weekend, I received the same kinds of calls. "Grace, your sister needs your help. Abigail is exhausted, the kids are too much. Jack had to go on a business trip. Abby is overwhelmed." Every time. Never once asking if I was okay, if I had exams, or if I had work. They did not care. To them, I was the good little sister willing to help. Or more accurately, the free nanny. Once I made it clear. "Mom, I am getting ready for finals, I cannot come." There was a pause. Then a long sigh. Heavy, like I had just betrayed the family. "So, you are abandoning your family, Grace? Your sister just gave birth. She is practically on the verge of postpartum depression. If you do not help, who will? Do you want to see the baby suffer because their mother is too exhausted?" I gritted my teeth. "What about Jack? Where is my brother-in-law?" My mother scoffed. "Davidson's is a man, dear. What would he know about taking care of babies?" I had swallowed my bitterness so many times, but that moment lodged a thorn deep into my chest. The next summer, after I had finished my sophomore year with an outstanding GPA and a promised promotion from my cafe manager, Abigail called me directly. No pretense. "Grace, we want to take a week-long vacation in Hawaii. We need a break. Mom said you could come home and watch the kids." I froze. "Why?" "Yeah. We already booked the tickets. The kids adore you. You can sleep in the living room. Milk and food are all ready, nothing complicated." I hissed under my breath. "You mean, you and Jack are flying off to relax while I, a full-time student with 2 jobs, come home to babysit your 5-year-old twins for a week?" Abigail chuckled lightly. "You are not tied down yet. And I know you would not make it hard for family. I am just so exhausted, Grace. Being a mom is tough." I hung up without saying goodbye. But 3 minutes later, my mother called. "If you refuse, I will be truly disappointed. Have you ever done anything significant for the family, Grace?" That sentence hit me like a hammer. I went back. I always went back. 1 week of hell. 2 hyperactive kids, no early bedtimes, picky eaters, endless chaos. Alone from dawn till way past midnight. No backup. No one asking if I was surviving. Each night I collapsed on the hard couch, my legs numb from exhaustion. I wanted to scream, but no one would have heard. When Abigail returned, sun-kissed and radiant in a floral dress, she merely laughed and said, "As long as the kids did not break any bones, I am happy, thanks. We got you a souvenir. A plastic pineapple keychain." I stared at it for a long while before tossing it straight into the trash. Something broke inside me. Not anger, but a deep, slow, irreparable crack. I finally realized if I did not set boundaries, they would never stop. Even so, I did not leave right away. Part of me was not strong enough yet, and another part still foolishly believed that if I just tried harder, they would change. But I was wrong. Very, very wrong. I had been counting the days. For 3 whole months that summer, I worked non-stop at the cafe during the day and helped with bookkeeping at a phone repair shop at night, just to save a little over $900. Not a huge amount, but to me, it was a treasure. And I knew exactly what I would use it for. A trip to the beach. The first real vacation of my life. Not to study, not to work, not to babysit. Just to lie on the sand, listen to the waves, and remember who I was. Without playing the role of the responsible daughter. I booked a room at a small inn in Long Beach, Washington, a single room, wooden walls, no fancy amenities, but just a few steps from the beach. I reserved a bus ticket, packed my suitcase a week in advance, and told no one in the family. It was not that I was hiding it, I just did not want to hear my mother ask, "Is Abigail coming too?" Or my father warn, "Be careful not to waste money." The morning of departure, I emailed both workplaces to request time off, switched my phone to airplane mode, and boarded the bus like I was fleeing a fire. My heart was pounding, not from nerves, but from something unfamiliar. Freedom. When I arrived, I let out a deep breath. No calls. No one bothering me. I dropped my suitcase, threw open the window, inhaled the salty breeze, and laughed like a kid who had just skipped school successfully. That night, I ate fresh grilled clams at a tiny seafood shack, ordered my first cocktail ever, and let the sea breeze wash away all my worries. I thought maybe, just maybe, the universe was finally letting me breathe. But then, it happened. On the second morning, as I was getting ready to head down to the beach, I heard a loud call outside my door. But bright. I froze. That voice was unmistakable. You. I opened the door. Standing there were my mother, Abigail, and the twins, rolling around and screaming like they had just guzzled energy drinks. "What is this?" I stammered. "Oh honey, you did not think we would let you vacation all alone, did you?" My mother beamed. "Family should be together. We booked a room right next door. Your sister reserved everything 2 days ago." Abigail chimed in, pushing the 2 kids toward me. "They have been so excited all week. When they heard Aunt Grace is going to the beach, they insisted on coming. And now that you are here, Jack and I can have some alone time. You understand, right? We rarely get date nights." Before I could even react, my mother rushed in. "I need to run to the store for a few things, and Abby wants a beach walk with Jack. Watch the kids for a bit, okay? Tonight we will all have dinner together." No one asked if I agreed. No one gave me time to say no. 3 minutes later the door slammed shut, and I, along with 2 hyperactive children, was trapped in a room the size of a shoebox. Then the disaster began. They ran around the bed, banged their heads against the walls, spilled water on electrical outlets and shattered the hanging mirror by throwing a sandal. When I shouted, one of them screamed back, "Aunt Grace hates me. I want to go home to Mommy." I nearly lost my mind. I had not come here to babysit. I came to heal, to breathe, to live. Instead, I was scrubbing pee off the mattress while the other kid played with my phone. That night, I did not get to eat out. My mother texted, "Just have dinner with the kids. Your father and I are eating out with Abby and Jack." I stared at the cold pizza on the table, then at the 2 boys hitting each other with the TV remote, and realized, this was not a vacation. This was hell, wrapped in the disguise of a beach trip. On the 3rd day, the kids clogged the toilet playing with the shower head. I had to pay nearly $200 to hire a plumber and cover the damages. My savings were wiped clean. That night, Abigail returned to my room, suntanned and lazy, complaining, "I am so exhausted, Grace. Did the kids fall asleep early?" I looked up, locking eyes with her. "Exhausted? You spent all day drinking wine on the beach. Meanwhile, I cleaned poop, stopped your kids from falling off the balcony, and paid for the damage you caused." Abigail frowned. Why are you so grumpy? I thought you enjoyed spending time with them. I needed a break too. I did not smile. I did not argue. I stood up, packed my clothes into my suitcase, and grabbed the return bus ticket I had bought as a backup, because deep down, I knew my family would never leave me alone. My mother knocked as I zipped my bag. "What are you doing, Grace?" "Leaving," I said firmly. "You are abandoning us here? How could you be so selfish?" I looked her straight in the eyes, without flinching. "I am not being selfish, I am finally living, and you cannot stop me." Then I pulled my suitcase behind me, leaving behind the shouting, the guilt-jerking, and the 2 kids screaming my name. Without looking back. I did not know what was waiting for me at home. But I knew one thing. I would never let anyone ruin another vacation of mine again. Not even family. I returned to Seattle like a walking corpse, body drained, wallet empty, and mind a tangled mess. The vacation I had waited nearly a year for turned into a storm of responsibilities and exploitation. But those days were also the final blow. The one that made me wake up. I could not go on like this. I would not. That night, I returned to my dorm, turned on my laptop and started looking for an apartment. Anywhere. As long as it was outside my parents' control. I could not let them continue using tuition as a noose, while every penny they spent went toward Abigail's houses and vacations. 2 days later, I called my mother. "I am moving out," I said flatly, no hesitation. There was a long silence. Then she let out a mocking laugh. "You are kidding, right? With your finances, how are you going to survive, Grace?" "I will work more hours." "Find a roommate. There are plenty of ways to live without begging family for scraps." Her voice turned cold instantly. "If you leave without permission, do not expect a single penny for your next tuition bill. Your father and I are not sponsoring your arrogance." I paused, breathing slowly. "Fine then, I will manage on my own." "You are destroying everything this family built, Grace." "No, I am escaping the mess this family trapped me in since I was 5 years old." I hung up. My hand was still trembling, but inside, everything felt crystal clear. 3 days later, I moved into a basement apartment in Rainier Valley. Cheap, damp, low ceilings. A lingering musty smell, but at least it was mine. No one else had the keys. I shared the place with a girl named Vanessa, an architecture major, tough, straightforward, and incredibly good at ignoring unpleasant calls from her own family. Vanessa was the first person who made me realize you could live without apologizing for existing. I worked 3 jobs, mornings at the cafe, afternoons assisting at a library, evenings doing data entry for a small law firm. Every night my body ached like I had been hit by a truck. But I held my head high, because every dollar I spent was my own. Sometimes, I fell asleep over my textbook. Some nights, I cried over instant noodles out of sheer exhaustion and hunger. But no one scolded me for not changing diapers. No one ordered me to buy baby formula at 2 in the morning. No one called me selfish for daring to live my own life. My mother kept calling, of course, but I stopped answering. My inbox filled with blame. "You have truly embarrassed your parents. Abby cried all night because you abandoned her. Your sister needs you. How can you be so heartless?" I did not respond. I owed no explanations for choosing my freedom. Years later, my father left a long voicemail. "If you do not apologize, Grace, do not expect to be welcomed at any family event. You are no longer part of this family." I listened to it all, without shedding a single tear. I remembered all the times I stood washing dishes at Abigail's birthday parties, while Dad sat next to her, kissed her forehead, and said, "I am proud you are my daughter." He never said that to me, not even once. That winter, I caught a terrible flu and ran a high fever for 3 straight days. No one called to check on me. Vanessa was the one who bought porridge and medicine, left them by my bed, and went to work her night shift. I remember curling up under my blanket, staring at the stained, yellowed ceiling, thinking, this must be rock bottom. And then? I smiled. Because at least this bottom was one I chose to reach on my own. not one anyone pushed me into. By the end of the semester, I achieved a GPA of 3.9, the highest in my class. I was nominated for an internship program at a fast-growing marketing firm downtown. I did not tell anyone in my family. They were no longer the audience to my life. One night, while closing the cafe, Vanessa said, "You know what, Grace? You are nothing like those privileged kids I usually meet." Yeah, that is because I was never one of the privileged ones. Immediately, we both burst out laughing. For the first time in months, my laughter tasted sweet. Not forced, not bitter, not broken. I knew hard times still lay ahead. But from now on, every step would be mine. Not the second child, not Abigail's little sister. Just Grace, complete, whole, and free. I walked out of the university gates on a bright June morning, holding my honors diploma, wearing a rented graduation gown, and feeling a strange emptiness inside. There were no parents, no flowers, no hugs. The rows of seats reserved for family remained eerily empty. I stood there, watching other graduates, wrapped in embraces, flashes of cameras, rounds of applause, and me, just me and the wind. Strangely, I felt light. I did not need people who clapped when I succeeded but stayed silent when I fell. I did not need fake appearances just to save face. I had gotten used to living alone, and this time I did not feel lonely. I felt free. 3 weeks later, I received an official job offer from the marketing firm where I interned, Mason & Rowe Communications, one of the fastest-growing PR agencies in Seattle. Position: Campaign Management Assistant. Starting salary: not astronomical but enough for me to begin a new chapter. My chapter. I moved out of the damp basement apartment, hugging Vanessa tightly goodbye. She cried. That I did not. But my throat burned. "You are going to crush it, Grace, and if anyone gives you trouble, call me. I will show up with a baseball bat." I smiled. I will not need it. From now on, I will protect myself. My new apartment was on the 5th floor of a small building in Capitol Hill. 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen, a living room just big enough for a sofa. But the balcony looked out over the bustling street below, and every evening, I could sit there drinking tea, reading books, listening to music, without being startled by crying children or my mother calling to demand chores. Every morning, I woke up with sunlight warming my face. Not to someone banging on my door yelling, "Go watch the kids." I chose my own meals, wore clothes I picked myself, went to work on my own 2 feet, with no one asking, "Have you called home yet?" Every night, as I lay in bed, I knew that the day I had just lived was mine. Mine alone. Work at Mason & Rowe was not easy. I handled difficult clients, rushed last-minute reports, sometimes pulled 10-hour days. But no one ordered me to make bottles, change diapers, or fetch snacks for a sister who lay around watching TV and called it postpartum exhaustion. I started saving. Every month, I put a little into a personal fund I called the Freedom Fund. I learned about investing, took advertising writing courses, attended weekend seminars. Step by step, I was building myself into the woman my family never believed I could be. Even so, there were wobbly moments. One evening, sitting alone eating udon from the nearby Japanese store, my phone rang. My mother's number. I let it ring until it stopped, then pressed silent. A few minutes later, a text came. "Are you coming home for Thanksgiving? Your sister really hopes you will." I did not answer. I was learning to choose peace over hollow duty. I did not want to return to a place where every word I spoke was considered rude, where every moment of rest was called laziness, where every accomplishment was belittled with a cruel comparison. Abigail did better at your age. One quiet weekend afternoon, as I was making coffee, the doorbell rang. I peeked through the peephole. A stranger, a man in his 30s, wearing a t-shirt with an electric company logo. I opened the door. "Grace Taylor?" he asked. "Yes?" "Someone sent you a special package. It says, Congratulations on your new beginning. Surprised, I signed for it. Inside the box was a tiny cactus and a card. No one grows thorns unless they have been stepped on first. V. Vanessa. The friend who stood with me through the darkest days. I hugged the little cactus to my chest, feeling a warmth spread through me. I placed it by the window. Small, tough, fearless against sun and wind. Just like me now. At night, I switched on the yellow light, sat on the balcony, propped my feet up on the railing, and sipped my first glass of red wine since moving out. The city below still buzzed with noise, but inside me, there was a solid, unshakable calm. No more accusation. No more unreasonable demands. No more being told to sacrifice for people who never asked what I wanted. Just grace. And a life that had finally, truly, begun. I turned 25 on a freezing Saturday, but my heart was warmer than ever. No big party, no fireworks. Just me and a few close colleagues laughing over drinks at a small bar in Fremont, as if for once, the world was perfectly fine. I thought everything would pass peacefully. But that was before I opened the envelope my mother handed me, her face glowing as if she had just bestowed a blessing. "The whole family wanted to give you something special," she said, her voice so sweet it made my skin crawl. I quietly tore open the seal. Inside was a round-trip plane ticket to a resort in Florida, along with the whole family, Dad, Mom, Abigail, Jack, and the twins. I was speechless. Why? The whole family? I tried to keep my voice even. "Oh, honey," my mother beamed. "Family should stay together. This time, we are staying at a proper resort, big rooms, private pools. We booked everything already. You will share a room with the kids. They are so excited to go with Aunt Grace." Abigail chimed in, patting my shoulder. "Thanks in advance. Jack and I plan to have a few spa sessions and some yoga classes. The kids just need the beach, the sand, and you." I smiled lightly. The kind of smile only I knew was fake. Neither of them noticed anything wrong. I finished my slice of birthday cake like nothing had happened. But inside, I had already made my decision. I would not let myself be dragged down again. Even if I had to pretend, I would hold the reins of this vacation myself. The very next morning, I booked another flight. To Key West, a quiet island. No luxury resorts. No screaming kids. No one who knew me. I also reserved a simple seaside inn, cozy enough that no one could find me, peaceful enough to find myself again. I kept it absolutely secret. I laughed and joked as if I had agreed to the family trip. I even sent cheerful texts in the family group chat, looking forward to it, to keep up appearances. But deep down, I had locked in my plan from the moment they handed me that ticket. The day of departure came. I arrived at the airport at 6 o'clock in the morning, dressed casually, pulling my suitcase like any ordinary vacationer. But inside, I felt like a fugitive escaping prison. My parents arrived early, Abigail and Jack right behind them, the twins screeching with excitement. I waved and smiled, then glanced at my watch, frowning. "I need to use the restroom. I will meet you all at the gate." "Be quick," my mother warned. "Do not be late." I nodded and slipped away from the noisy crowd. But instead of heading toward the bathrooms, I veered straight to international check-in, to another airline's counter where my flight to Key West was boarding. I handed over my ticket, received my boarding pass, and tucked myself into a corner near the gate, breathing deeply. My heart thundered. I knew when they realized I was missing, chaos would erupt. I turned on my phone and quickly typed a message. "I am not going to Florida. I chose my own vacation. Hope everyone enjoys their trip, just like I am enjoying my freedom." I pressed send. Then immediately turned off my phone. I boarded the plane. No tears, no hesitation. As the seat tilted back, I rested my head against the window. The blue sky stretching out like an escape hatch I had waited my whole life for. When I landed, I turned my phone back on. It exploded with notifications. Over 40 missed calls from Mom, several dagger-sharp texts from Dad. You are such a disappointment, you abandoned the family at the airport. Your sister is crying, the kids are asking for Aunt Grace. Who do you think you are? I scrolled past them all, then hit silent mode. I spent the entire first afternoon strolling along the empty beach, my bare feet sinking into warm sand. On the way back to the inn, I stopped by a small craft shop, bought a string of seashells and hung it on my door. My first small victory. No one but me would decide where Grace would go, what she would do, who she would love, or what she would be responsible for. Never again. That night, lying on a simple bed, listening to the gentle crash of waves against the shore, I burst out laughing. Real, raw laughter. The laughter of someone who had just flipped the chessboard that had been rigged against her for 25 years. I returned to Seattle with sun-kissed skin, a light heart, and a crystal clear plan. I would never let them drag me into that endless loop again. No apologies. No explanations. No compromises. The first day I turned my phone back on, it was flooded with missed calls and angry messages, piling up like garbage. Mom had left a dozen voicemails, her voice growing sharper each time. Grace Taylor. How long do you plan to run from your responsibilities? You made Abigail ashamed in front of the whole family. You ruined the entire vacation with your selfishness. We did not raise you like this. You need to come back and apologize. I listened to every word. No fast forwarding. No skipping. And then I deleted them all. 3 days later, they showed up at my apartment. As I stepped out of the elevator, there was Mom, standing right at my door, face flushed red, eyes blazing. Dad stood with arms crossed, glaring at me like I was a convict escaping prison. Abigail and Jack were there too, dragging the twins who were shrieking at the top of their lungs in the hallway. We need to talk, Mom growled. Not here, I replied coldly. Do not act so arrogant, Grace, my father hissed. You have disgraced this family. I unlocked the door, slipped inside, leaving it half open. They stormed in like wolves scenting blood. Abigail immediately launched into accusations. You abandoned the family at the airport. The kids cried for days. Do you even know how many times they asked, "Where is Aunt Grace?" Jack chimed in. And who is going to pay for the cancelled hotel rooms and flight tickets? I stood there, in the middle of my tiny apartment, looking at their furious faces. And I did not feel afraid. I only felt amused. I crossed my arms, my voice low and firm. From now on, I owe you nothing. Before they could react, I continued. I do not owe you babysitting. I do not owe Mom and Dad ticket money. I do not owe anyone an apology. My mother gaped. What did you just say? I looked her straight in the eyes. I do not owe this family anything. The air in the room thickened, frozen and heavy. My father slammed his hand onto the table. If you walk away from this family, do not expect anyone to help you when you are in trouble. I nodded. I would rather save myself than beg at the feet of people who have always treated me like I am nothing. My mother cried. Abigail grabbed the twins, who looked around, confused and scared. Jack growled. You will be alone forever. I smiled. The calmest smile of my life. At least I will have peace. I opened the door and pointed outside. Leave, and do not come back unless you can respect my life. They shouted a few more things, but I did not hear. I slammed the door shut, locked it with all 3 bolts, and slid down to sit on the floor, my back against the door, listening to their footsteps fade away down the hall. A sweet, thick silence wrapped around me. That night, I opened my laptop, went online, and started searching for a new apartment. I knew, if I stayed here, they would never leave me alone. 1 week later, I moved to Ballard, a quieter area, far from downtown. The apartment was smaller, the rent was higher, but in exchange, no one knew my new address. I changed my phone number, I changed my email, I even changed my bank account to sever every possible tie. I vanished from the old world as if I had never existed. Every morning, I woke up early, jogged along the pier, sipped coffee by the sunny window, and went to work with a strange lightness in my chest. No one called asking me to babysit. No one dragged me into twisted family obligations. No one weighed me down with fake expectations. This life, though far from perfect, was mine. Sometimes, in moments of weakness, I missed them. But every time I reread the old hateful messages I had saved as reminders, I knew I had made the right choice. I chose freedom. I chose myself. One evening, as I was folding laundry in the living room, I caught a glimpse of a young woman in the mirror, her eyes shining with confidence and peace. I smiled at her. Grace Taylor, the girl once called a failed copy, had finally become an original. Needing no validation from anyone but herself. From Grace's story, I realized that sometimes family is not a place of nurturing, but a chain that binds. True freedom is not a reckless rebellion. It is the conscious decision to reject toxic expectations and live for yourself. Grace showed me, no one has the right to demand that you sacrifice your life for theirs. Independence, setting boundaries, and choosing personal happiness are not acts of selfishness. They are acts of courage and worthiness. What do you think about Grace's journey? Have you ever felt the need to fight for your own life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And do not forget to follow the channel to explore more powerful and inspiring stories about family and life.